This episode is brought to you by MPB. Get cash for the kit you're not using or trade it in for the gear you want at mpb.com. Hey folks, in this interview, I'm speaking with Mark Cruz from Nikon. We're going to be talking about the brand new Nikon Z9. This is TWiP. Hey, welcome back to another episode of This Week in Photo. I'm your host, Frederick Van Johnson. Today, Mark Cruz is on the line from Nikon USA. Yes, that Nikon. And we're going to be talking about a brand new camera. Actually, the flagship camera of their line, the Z9. I want to dive into it, not from a brochure, features, specs, fanboy perspective, but more of a real guy looking at this camera, considering it, and wondering if the hype is actually reality. Because there's, I want to see where the line is in there, and Mark is a perfect person to bring that to us. So, Mark, welcome to the show. How's it going?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
It is good to have you. It is good to have you. So you are the senior manager for product for digital cameras and interchangeable lenses at Nikon. What does that mean? Are you the guy that says, you know what, we need to move that button over there, or you know what, let's make this focal length lens? What's your purview?
I have a few roles here, but part of them is adding to that hype that you were talking about there. I work with the marketing department, so as in the DCIL division, that's digital camera interchangeable lens, I touch DSLR as well as our mirrorless portfolio. As a senior manager with the marketing department, I'm kind of responsible for bringing the products from our Nikon corporation in Japan to our local market here in the USA, really understanding the needs of the market, developing the content for our website, and the way we target the audiences. So in terms of the product itself, I work with the technical liaison with future development, and we talk about how certain technologies would be adaptable to certain markets. So it's a little bit of everything. It's a little bit of technical. It's a little bit of marketing, but a lot of fun because the technology and the fact that I'm a shooter myself. So I can talk your language, my friend. I want to get a good deal too on a camera, and I want to make sure that it's getting into the right people's hands. So let's do it. Yeah,
you know what? These cameras these days, back in the day, I mean, we spoke about this a little bit in the green room before we started recording. My history is photojournalism. I started in the United States Air Force as a combat photojournalist, and it was all Nikon. Probably still, it was all Nikon, And I remember starting, one of my first cameras was a Nikon F3 with the big motor drive on the bottom. And, I had the whole 9 yards, my kit with my low pro bag full of lenses and another bag full of film. And it was just pure happiness. I remember back then, it was a huge deal, still is today, but it was a huge deal when Nikon released a new camera body, kind of like Adobe releasing a new version of Photoshop. It was like, oh, wow, we have new superpowers. Same with these cameras. Back then, it was all around shutter speed, I think, or not shutter speed, frames per second and focusing speed, on the cameras when they got autofocus. So where are we now? So, sort of making that leap from an F3, manual, ISO, f-stop, shutter speed, all that stuff, focus, everything is manual, to today when basically we have, R2-D2 taking photos for us in our pocket. What is it all true? I mean, is the focusing speed that we see on these cameras, on your marketing page? I'm sitting on the marketing page now, and those videos, it just looks like, Arthur C. Clarke borderline magic, the tracking and the focus. How is this Z9 able to do that?
Yeah, you know what? We announced the camera a little over 2 weeks ago, and it's starting to make the rounds in stores now, and people are starting to get their hands on it and really appreciate it firsthand. From what I can tell you, the hype is real. The technology is there now, and what we've been able to do is match and even surpass the performance of our flagship. Prior to this was our D6 DSLR. Mm-hmm. And for many years, that has been our flagship. Even when we started coming out with mirrorless cameras, our Z system back in 2018, it's not even been 3 years. But our flagship performance of autofocus was always relegated to the DSLR format. It's only now with the Z9 that we've been able to surpass that. And the way we've been doing that is through, well, a couple of things. There's physical components in the camera, namely the sensor and the processor, that can adapt very quickly to rapid change. And there's also development processes when they build the cameras and they program it, something called deep learning. And that's kind of like the programming methodology that they're using now. And when you talk about all these fancy things, it's not only just about the autofocusing speed and precision, it's also about subject detection. So, in days past, you would pick a focus point, kind of relegated it to a certain point in the frame, focus, recompose, what have you. Now, the autofocus squares can conform to the shape of the subject that it detects. And now this camera with the deep learning design can detect 9 different subjects, everything from humans to animals to vehicles. And not only that, but the precision of the focusing can adapt as quickly and if not faster than a DSLR. And that has to do with something called a stacked sensor, and as well as a new processor in here that is probably 10 to 12 times more powerful than our previous highest end mirrorless camera, the Z7 II. So we've really gone leaps and bounds ahead, and so much so that we're anointing the Z9 now the true flagship of the entire Nikon brand. So we've gone from DSLR to Z9.
Yeah, which is a lot. I want to talk about that leap too, because I was on the website a couple weeks ago, about a month ago, on NikonUSA.com, looking at the Z7s, and I'm thinking, wow, these look pretty amazing, And then now you guys dropped the ace of the Z9 out there. So I want to talk about the delta between those two. Before we do that, let's talk about who this camera is for. Again, looking at the site, I'm seeing all different influencers from all different genres, a lot of landscape, sports and action, some wedding up there. Is there a particular avatar that you and product management and product development had in mind when you were kind of sitting and whiteboarding this camera? Was there like, okay, we're going to make the ultimate birders camera. We're going to make the ultimate sports photography camera. Is there an avatar, or is it just, this is the camera and just aim it at anything that light is bouncing off of and it'll capture it?
That's a great question. Typically, historically, our flagship quote-unquote camera, whether it be our D2, 3, 4, 5, 6, anything with a single-digit number, was primarily pointed or catered towards the photojournalist and sports photographer. We put an emphasis on, say, low resolution, high frame rate, high ISO performance, because the needs of the sports and photojournalists really were getting it out on the wire quickly and shooting in any situation where ambient light was all they had. Now, with the advances in technology, we're at a point where we felt that delivering on ISO was going to happen anyways. We could now push the limit with resolution. So, as opposed to our previous flagship that only had, well, I say only, but 20.9 megapixels, that was the D6, we have gone with Z7 II resolution. So for those of you familiar with our SLR line, it would be like a D850 resolution of 45.7 megapixels in here. Now, that's very peculiar. It's unusual because we've historically reserved that resolution for commercial photography, landscape photography, something that required that big I was going to say file size, but I want to say resolution. And usually with resolution comes the price of file size, which is why, maybe wedding photographers or people that take a lot of photos don't necessarily need, in terms of file size. The great thing about the Z9 is that we've sort of put a cheat code in here in that we've programmed it with a new compression technology called high efficiency RAW. And we can take RAW files that are smaller than JPEGs now, and have extremely high frame rates with 45 megapixel images and shoot for very long periods of time. So to answer your question, who is this geared for? Well, primarily our photojournalists and sports photographers, people that shoot fast action, high impact images. But it's also catered towards those people that demand the high resolution, such as commercial photographers, such as landscape photographers, people that don't want to sacrifice that detail and have to buy 2 separate bodies. Further to that, we are in 2021, and there is such a push right now for hybrid content creators that may be, a small production or a one-man band that need that professional video quality to it as well. We have outfitted this camera with our highest level video specs. Historically, the highest level video camera in our lineup is not necessarily our flagship photo camera. So for instance, when we came out with the D5, I would rather shoot video with a D850. When we came out with the D6, I'd rather shoot video with a Z6. Right now, with the Z9 or Z9, depending on which part of the world you're from, this is our top level video camera, stills camera, and but high resolution camera as well. So in terms of frame rates, this is the highest, 20 frames per second in RAW or 30 in JPEG with full resolution. We can even achieve frame rates as high as 120 frames per second, which we can go into all those tech specs. But just in terms of positioning, who is it for? I think historically we are targeting photojournalists and sports photographers, but unlike never before, we are, with the same camera, hitting the commercial photographers because of the beautiful, exquisite quality that we're generating, not only from the sensor, but Z optics that are circulating around the largest mount in the industry right now for 35 millimeter format.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there, because one of the things to unpack is, like you mentioned, we're moving into 2022, which sounds weird, but we're moving into 2022 already, and the world is video, right? Not all of it, but there's an increasing emphasis on content creators and photographers and videographers to create video and things that are related to video. So is this camera and the video capabilities in this camera a direct response to that? You know, that hey, because traditionally it's been, for a lot of camera manufacturers before video started taking off, it was more of, let's add video in there, but we're really a stills camera. We're really for stills photographers, but you know, if you want a real video camera, go buy a Red or something like that. But we're really stills, but you can do video with us. Or how is Nikon balancing that?
It's a really good question. So, bless you. So we actually, Nikon was actually the first one in, I think, 2008 to come out with a DSLR that shot video. It was the first hybrid camera. That was the D90. And from that point on, the idea of shooting DSLRs for video was very attractive, specifically because of the full frame. Typically, you'd be shooting with Super 35 formats, which would give you a smaller sensor, but it was very unusual to shoot with 35 millimeter because it gave you a shallower depth of field that people weren't accustomed to seeing. So for the aesthetic, as well as the low price point and small form factor, DSLR video became very, very attractive. Moving into mirrorless now, it becomes even more attractive because of the level of autofocus precision. The new lenses now generate the Z line generates very minimal focus breathing, which is great for people that are doing high-end video. And as well, the optics are much more silent. So in terms of the user base, the content creators now, they can be sort of a small production that has very high output. And we are really producing here, professional level video around this format, and we're able to deliver on specifications that are groundbreaking, such as 8K video. Now, 8K video has been introduced in this 35 millimeter stills format camera for a few months now. We're not the first to the party, but what's groundbreaking with this camera is the length of time we're able to record 8K video, which makes it very, very practical. So in this day and age, as you mentioned, we're entering 2022, 8K video presents a lot of opportunities for people because, number one, if you're producing a 4K timeline and you are, say, a one-man band, if I were shooting, say, with one camera and I wanted to punch in, I can do so and still maintain the resolution that would allow me to produce a 4K timeline. Mm-hmm. I can even export stills out of an 8K video at approximately 33 megapixels. That would be almost the same resolution of a D800 taking stills, and get very high quality for the stills. But what's practical about the Z9 is because we've designed, I happen to have one right here, we made the intentional design to go with a full body, meaning to say an integrated vertical grip, and the battery that we're using now is much larger than, say, our Z7 II. We're able to record for over 2 hours. And not only that, but the heat dissipation is so good in this camera that it will sustain the 8K, which is very processor intensive, very heavy in heat generation, for a legit 2 hours. So I think in terms of production goes, it is opening up new doors for content. It will open new doors when it comes out on the market for content creators because of their options of shooting not only high resolution 8K, but also high frame rate 4K. And this can now do 120 frames per second at 4K. So we've never had a camera in our lineup that can even approach 4K 60, with full frame. Some of our cameras had to have a crop. Now we have full pixel readout in many of these resolutions. So the specs are going to come out there, but there is a lot that this camera can do, including things that people are going to love in the future. We are going to come out with a built-in RAW capability without the use of an external recorder. So all of that can go right to the CF Express card in the camera. So I think in terms of your question, content creators looking for a solution where you can do stills, but also high-end video and have one body to do it all, this is a very viable format.
Yeah. I was thinking, you mentioned the CF Express card. I was wondering, as you're mentioning that 2 hours I'm guessing 2 hours of continuous video that's not broken into 15-minute or 20-minute segments. It's all one beautiful file that you can take off the memory card?
That's correct, yes. So we are now writing to H.265 files. There's several different formats you can record here, but in answer to your question, yes, you can record a continuous 2 hour, up to 2 hour, 5 minutes files. And we can do that in several various formats in H.265, but including built-in ProRes 422 HQ. So we can do that all in camera.
In camera?
ProRes in camera. ProRes
really?
422, yes. Okay. So we can do that up to 4K in the camera. And then later on with a firmware update, we're going to unlock some features in the camera. And that's coming out in 2022, and we'll be able to shoot internal RAW into the camera as well. Yep.
Wow. All right, I need that camera. The camera that you have right there, I need you to box that up and send it over to me as soon as possible. Look at him, teasing.
We've been waiting for this for a long time. Trust me. We here at Nikon, we're wanting for a flagship. I've been doing, I remember doing these interviews about a year ago when we came out with our second versions of Z6 II and Z7 II. And it was then people were starting to ask for the flagship camera because they could see where the direction of this was going. And I'm glad the day's here.
And just back to the cards again, you mentioned CF Express cards will fit in there. Any special sauce cards, or read-write speeds required for that body?
If you go to Nikon USA and you go to the Z9 page, there is a more, I think it's a more tab, and then you can go to a support, and we actually list all of the approved memory cards for this, not just CF Express, but XQD. There's several different brands right now, so I would direct you to there. You can go right to the product page and find that out.
Mark, one of the things about Nikon that I think, in many of the leading camera brands, but it's in particular Nikon that people kind of wave the flag about is the robustness and the ruggedness of the bodies. In fact, I dropped a Nikon F3 camera out of a helicopter at eucalyptus tree height, and the lens came off and needed repair, but the body was fine, right? So, it's a camera. When I was shooting Nikon, I felt like these are cameras that I don't have to baby. Now, when you fast forward to the Z9 and people are making a purchase decision about the Z9, with all this technology packed inside of this thing, am I going to have to, baby it, or is it going to be just as rugged as the old FM2s and the F3s?
One of the things that our engineers pay a lot of attention to, and we've been known for this, just like you've said, we have a reputation of the cameras being built like tanks, is the weather sealing. Now with the new Z series, they've actually upped their standards, both in the lenses and in the body. So in terms of the weather sealing and the robustness, it is pro level. It is the same grade as we would say as a D6. And so that has been our flagship in terms of build quality, weather sealing, and the Z9 is at that same level. So in terms of the abuse that you can do to the camera, this is at the top grades that we've ever had for cameras, and it all comes around a magnesium alloy chassis, which provides a good balance of rigidity, but weight as well. We could use heavier metals if we wanted to, but then it would be too heavy. So it's the perfect balance of rigidity and lightweightness that will give us that practical usage that we do. But I think everybody that holds a Nikon camera is generally pleased with it. I think there have been some websites out there that have actually taken apart Z6s and Z7 IIs and looked at every point where there could be a weather sealing and found weather sealing on it. So even our cameras from the Z6 and Z7 series have extremely robust weather sealing. So I feel very confident taking it out into the elements. Actually, if you go to our YouTube channel, you'll see some a testimony to that as well. As to the weather sealing.
Yeah, and I know that kind of brings me around to Nikon Professional Services. So the folks that, they're kind of standing by in case something goes sideways on one of your photography missions. What does that look like? It's not directly related to the Z9, but if someone was to purchase a Z9 and take it on an adventure to Madagascar or something, and something goes sideways and the camera gets damaged or otherwise is inoperable, what's the flow for that person that's away from home? They got their camera, they're on a paid shoot, and they need to get this thing done, and something happened. What's that NPS flow?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would encourage everyone going on those once-in-a-lifetime places, always have a backup body with you. But when it comes to our Nikon Professional Services, in Nikon USA, we have a program, as we do generally all around the world with our different installations all across the world. Every region treats it a little bit differently, but we try to coordinate with other regions to provide support for our members. In the US, for example, we have our own membership list that we manage, that we support, that we take care of in terms of gear loans. And I would encourage people that are in the US right now to go on nikonusa.com. We actually have a new kind of tiered service in there that provides different caterings of service for the professional, but really it is to meet the demands of professionals in terms of expedited repairs, loan gear when necessary, as well as support from a technical perspective. So that's what we aim to do with Nikon Professional Services, because for the longest time, as you said, even when you were shooting with the F3, we have such a dedicated and robust user base that uses this for many, many years. And I know that in Nikon Japan, they have put a priority on addressing the needs of the professional, not only from the product development side, in actually committing to creating a camera like the Z9, but also from the service perspective. So in answer to your question, if you were in some place that, you were away from home, reach out to your local Nikon installation out there, mention that you're an NPS member, and we'll do our best to take care of you. That's the beauty of our network of Nikon subsidiaries across the world, is that all of them generally do have an NPS outfit.
Yeah, and it's important. Murphy travels in your camera bag when you don't have any other options, and he tends to make things go sideways for you, if you're not prepared. But like you said, always have a backup. That's military thinking right there, or just professional thinking. Always have a backup camera with you, especially if you're going to parts unknown. Since I have you on the hot seat, Mark, I'm assuming you have some influence with product development and how these things get built. Here's a question. These cameras, these top-end cameras, especially this one, the Z or Z9, connectivity. Obviously, I know you can't talk about unreleased features and all that stuff, and I know this camera has Wi-Fi connectivity built into it, but what about cellular technology? What about in the future, if I say, I would love to be able to, given the correct coverage, 5G or whatever, it'd be great if I could not use my cell phone and just shoot directly to a virtual SD card or compact flash card somewhere. Is that in the future, or does Nikon think that's a viable workflow?
Well, we're always, as part of my role, we are always taking feedback from the field, and it's part of my role to really deliver those to the engineers. So we in Nikon USA endeavor to provide, several times a year feedback, and we work hard with the engineering department to determine what is the needs of the community going forward, and we do our best to try to forecast that. What's exciting about it now is when you talk about cellular technology, we have a new compatibility with our cameras with cell phones called NX Mobile Air, and what that is, it's a free app. And there's also a subscription service to unlock unlimited uploads to your phone. But through a USB-C cable, you can basically transfer your images from your memory card to your phone and transfer those to an FTP site, either by Wi-Fi of your phone or through your cellular service of your phone, which is for people that are shooting in the field and need to get that to an editor on the wire and not having to be relegated to the local Wi-Fi network of wherever you are or being out in the field. You can do that through your cellular service. So that is an app that we released recently, and that'll be compatible with the Z9 as well when it comes out. So the technology is here in terms of connectivity, not just directly from the camera to your computer, to your smart device, but also through your phone to the web, to wherever you want that FTP server to be. So I think you're speculating on more direct from the camera, having a built-in cellular service within the camera to the web.
I want my iPad in my camera, right? I want an app store. Right. I want to be able to FTP directly from the camera. I want, if I decide, hey, I want to shoot like Joe McNally, I want to be able to download a Joe McNally app that's going to make my photography as good as Joe McNally's. That's what I want. I want a Nikon app store. That's what I want. So can we have that next year?
I tell you, we're listening to the market, but it reminds me of a camera that we brought out several years ago. It was actually a Coolpix camera that had an Android operating system in it. So it's not unheard of us to go off script from our typical operating system and incorporate the new technologies. It's it's definitely something that we're looking at, especially with the speed that people need their images and videos to get to their ultimate destination. We're making big inroads in there. So keep looking at our channels because we've even announced something for our NPS members, that something called NX Field, and it can connect multiple cameras. And the key thing here is the FTP client and putting it to FTP servers. So check that out. We can actually connect multiple cameras to an iPad, trigger them with an iPad, and send them through hardwire LAN cables or even Wi-Fi to an FTP server. So we have some actually pretty robust solutions for our professional community right now for under NPS.
That's fantastic. Lots of cool stuff. I know we got to put the landing gear down here in just a second. Just a couple more questions for you. Looking at the sort of lineup that is coming out with the Z9, are there any plans to have upgrades to lenses that are going to go out that are specifically tailored to work with the Z9? Obviously, it's going to be backwards compatible, but as we push technology forward, what does that look like? And then on the strobe side, on the speed light side of the world, are there any innovations happening over there that make use of the capabilities inside of the Z9?
Yeah, we just released a press release saying that we are developing relationships with Nissan as well as Profoto to have full compatibilities of their flashes with our Z9. So going forward, you're going to see a lot more pairings and collaboration with Nikon and third-party flash manufacturers. So we're excited about that going forward. I can tell you about that. We just you can go to our website, nikonusa.com, and read our press release on that. Yeah. And we've just released that recently. In terms of lenses and optics, usually I would be a boring guy to talk to in terms of that, because our canned line is always, well, we don't comment on future product. But in 2021, we've really changed the script. We've actually released a roadmap of the lenses that are coming out in the future that we've committed to on our website. You can find it on there, and it details, the focal length, not necessarily specific apertures, but the focal length of lenses that are going to be coming out within the next 2 years. So, and one of them that I'll tell you that we do roadmaps now with a silhouette of the lens that shows you the certain focal lengths that are coming out. For example, we had a 24 to 120, just came out that we announced at the same time, and as well as a 100 to 400 that we came out with for the Z9. But I think what you're getting at is some of the more high-end sports photographers' lenses out there. We did do a development announcement at the same time as the announcement of the Z9, call for the 400 millimeter 2.8 TCVRS. So this lens will have a built-in teleconverter. It'll be a 400 millimeter lens, f2.8, with a native Z mount. So it is not adapted from an F mount lens. This will give the sports photographer that key lens. It's kind of a staple lens. This is why it's the first super telephoto that we're coming out with to complement the vast array of lenses that we already have for the Z mount. We have the trinity of 2.8 lenses, the 14 to 24, 24 to 70, and 70 to 200. We have a couple of lenses that can reach 400, the 100 to 400, as well as the 70 to 200 with the 2 times teleconverter. But both those combinations really max out at 5.6. We're going to give you 2.8 as well as a built-in teleconverter all in one, and that's coming out soon. We did a development announcement on that, so that will tailor perfectly with the Z9 customer because that seems to me a staple lens for people shooting on big fields like football, soccer, baseball, and they need that reach, they need that intensity, they need the framing that the 400 millimeter provides and the accuracy of that focus. That'll be a very exciting announcement to come out very shortly.
Yeah, I can't wait to. Yeah, you guys are busy over there. What does the mobile space, does that keep Nikon up at night? The fact that companies like Apple are releasing phones like the 13 Pro Max with cinema this and focus that and and ProRes, all this stuff they're cramming into this relatively speaking, consumer grade phone. What does that look like from a Nikon flagship, big brand? We drive images and we make the best of the best. Does it keep you up at night, or is it complementary? How do you feel about that?
I think it's actually clarified where our focus should be. And for many, many years, maybe like 10, 12 years ago, we had a lot of compact point and shoot cameras. So as that market has shrunk, we've directed our focus and our efforts and our research and development into the higher end cameras. So if you look at our portfolio of Z products, it really starts at the $1,000 level with the Z50. And so we're targeting a more sophisticated customer. We obviously can appreciate that a lot of people appreciate photography now, and it's actually been really good in the respect that, I myself have an 11 Pro Max here, and that because of people's, insatiable need for imagery, they can actually appreciate and talk the language of photography a little bit better now from a layman's perspective than, say, 10 years ago. And in doing so, I think it makes them more adept into looking at products such as a Z50 or a Z6 or Z7 as something that is in their future because they want to advance their imaging and they can appreciate, say, a 1.4 or 1.8 lens or a 2.8 lens and the depth of field characteristics that brings. They can appreciate the artistry that a mirrorless or a DSLR camera can bring. So if you say, does it keep me up at night? Well, I mean, it's definitely shrunk our point and shoot market, but that was not necessarily a bad thing because our portfolio was so broad range. Now I'm primarily focused on our digital camera interchangeable lens division, which is our fastest growing division. And not only that, but in 2021, what used to be more of a niche that was the full frame market is now the fastest growing market. So I can spend my time looking at Z7 II customers, Z9 customers, and be really excited because the language that they speak is far more advanced language now, thanks to the phones and people's need to get imagery out there. So it's great problem solving, and it's great ways to find collaboration and how we can make our products talk with the cameras, but also elevate everybody's appreciation for imagery. Nikon at its heart is an imaging company. We're started off as an optics company, and we're not making just widgets and chips and things out there. We're really passionate about the photographer and the image content creator. So when new technologies come out, we're just as excited. And we believe that our products can be complementary to that. And it also forces us to step up our game and see how we can improve the imaging experience for everybody. And as our sort of our semi-tagline for the Z9, it's creating a brand new image making experience.
Yeah, yeah. Like we talk about it in the show a lot. I'm a fan of the word and not or, right? Because you don't have to not like shooting with a phone and for fear of not being able to shoot with a quote proper camera, an interchangeable lens, mirrorless camera. You can do both, and it can be situational. Looking at the Z line, you were mentioning the Z line from the Z6, the Z7, Z7 II, and now the Z9. Put those in buckets for me in terms of purchasing decision. Is the purchase decision, is that knob basically tied to price? I'm going to get as much camera as I can afford, and I can only afford that one, so I'm going to get that one. Or is it some other metric that you're looking at? Like who is buying which one of these cameras?
That's a great question. I was just into Best Buy recently, and I looked at a GoPro there, and it was really easy. 8, 9, 10. Which one can you afford? And And now, when you look at our lineup, we have. I'm going to speak strictly for the Z format because we still have DSLRs out there, but strictly for the Z format, I think price does play a factor for people. And it used to be that full frame presented much larger bodies because you'd have to have a bigger prism. You'd have to have a bigger mirror, and that would steer people's choices. But with mirrorless right now, if you look at all our bodies from the Z5 to the Z7 II, they're the exact same footprint. Like you wouldn't be able to tell if you were blindfolded which one was which. So in terms of what to get, typically when we came out with the Z6 and Z7, you look at the resolution. So the Z in our lineup, the Z7 and the Z7 II, the second version of it, is really catered towards those people that would appreciate higher resolution, 45 megapixels. Whereas the Z6 and Z6 II, they're more of an all-around performer because of the lower resolution at 24 megapixels. It produces a higher ISO at 51,000 ISO. So I think the diversity and appreciating low light situations might be geared a little bit more towards the Z6, whereas people that are craving that high resolution would gravitate more towards the Z7. Maybe also for frame rates, there's an advantage with the Z6 series because of the smaller file sizes. You can achieve faster frame rates a little bit. You can achieve 14 frames per second, I believe 10 frames per second on the Z7 series. So there are those things to consider. For the Z5, it's kind of towards the entry-level full-frame customer that wants, say, like a D7. Think about it as a D750 customer getting that quality inside of a mirrorless format. Now, we also have 2 DX format cameras, and those are around, let's just say $1,000, give or take, for the Z50. And those, again, are really catered towards people that appreciate the smaller, more compact format. And as I said, the bodies are, very generally much the same, but we can also make smaller lenses for the Z format despite being the same mount size. And we also have a very unique offering that we just recently released a couple of months ago, and that is the ZFC. And it's styled after, I believe, the Nikon FM style. And it has a retro feel, tactile dials that you turn for the ISO, the shutter speed. So it's a really slowed down workflow, but it's really kind of that, I'll say it, hipster type of camera where you have that engagement with the camera. It's not all about speed, it's really about the moment. So, and that's something that I think people really appreciated with their old Nikon film cameras, is that they were a little bit more sunk into each click. It wasn't so much about 14 frames per second. It was about that one moment and connecting with the environment around you. So we have some unique offerings, but and then when you come to the Z9, price point does make a difference. It is the highest price point out there, but it is very attractive because it's much cheaper than, say, our D6 even. So I think that's one of the reasons it has such a buzz on the internet right now, because at $5,500 or $54.99. This is breaking grounds for flagship cameras. So yeah, it kind of goes linearly in terms of price from Z50, Z5, Z6, Z7, now Z9. But in terms of the Z5 and Z6, you're really looking at the differences between, I would say a more video-centric customer is picking up Z6 II, and then maybe more entry-level photo guy is picking up Z5, and then more higher-end commercial photographer that wants that high resolution picking up Z7. So I think that's kind of like where they lie.
Yeah, it's interesting. And again, it's going to depend on you. Obviously, the budget is going to be the main driver, but also the genre that you're shooting. And, are you professional? Are you just dipping a toe in the water? And if you jump in, my logic is if you jump into a brand like Nikon and get what you can afford, the best thing that you can afford that suits the genre that you're shooting, and you fall in love with it, then you upgrade and get the next camera, and that current camera becomes your backup camera. So when you're in Madagascar and something breaks, you still, you're still covered, and you can still use the lenses interchangeably and all that. So yeah, really, really cool stuff. I have a friend of mine who's he's a Nikon shooter. He was going to try to join us for this interview. His birthday is today, so he couldn't join us. His name's Troy Miller. Happy birthday, Troy. But he sent me a couple questions to ask you from he's a I think 30-year wedding shooter, shooting Nikon the entire time. So he has questions, and he's an owner of the Z/Z 2, I believe, 6.2. But he says, will we ever see an electronic shutter that can sync a flash at any shutter speed without having to use high-speed sync?
Right. Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. I think I'm trying to ascertain the technological limitations myself, actually. At present, the great exciting part is that we can do that right now on the Z9. So the big technological advancement of the Z9 is that the sensor readout speed is so fast that it's really the first of its kind to dispense of the mechanical shutter altogether. Yeah. So the sync speed for it, we can reach up to 1/200th of a second right now. I can't predict the future, but I think that they could come, really just as a fan of photography myself. But I have nothing really definitive to answer in terms of is it coming or not, like I have with some other questions. But I can see why he would ask that question, because from a high-speed sync perspective, it does deplete the power when you're forcing your strobes to kind of strobe like that. So, keep your eyes peeled. We are working more with third-party flash manufacturers going forward and partnering with them and making them talk to our cameras better. But I can see why he asked the question. I'm rooting for it as well. But right now, our maximum flash speed is 1/200th of a second for the Z9. Yeah.
And the other question from him was, he said, real world application like at a wedding, how does the Z9 compare acquiring focus in soft light against the D5?
It sounds odd coming from me because I'm the marketing guy, but we have an ambassador out in Philadelphia, and he's a wedding photographer. His name's Cliff Mountainer, and you're going to be hearing from him soon because he's taking it in wedding situations. And what we've improved now in the camera, it's funny because when we first came out with the Z series, our AF detection was, I think it was around -1, and then we improved that by -2 when we came out with a firmware update. Now the Z9 is up to -6.5 EV of AF detection range. So bottom line, it can focus in really low light. Now we have a mode called Starlight mode in the Z9 that will bring that down to -8.5 EV. So I think, and there are some videos already out on YouTube right now where people are basically showing the camera detect a silhouette, a backlit silhouette, and it's detecting faces on there. So it is actually producing focus even in darker situations than you can naturally see. And I think we are at a point now where if you are familiar with the performance of DSLRs in low light situations, you're going to see that we are meeting, or in some cases exceeding, the DSLRs, especially when we turn on that starlight mode. It's called low light AF in some of our other cameras, but now we've never reached negative 8.5 EV, and we've done that on the Z9. So I think if the question was about the Z9, right? Yeah. So the Z9 is our top focusing for low light, negative 6.5 EV, and then when you turn on starlight, negative 8.5. So that's going to be a game changer for wedding photographers.
Yeah, that sounds like it can take a picture of a black cat in a closet with no lights on, right? And get a sharp focus.
Devin, but you know what? I haven't tried it in those situations. I have seen my colleagues shoot black pet and detecting the eye, which seemed very bizarre to me. So it's there. I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised if you can walk into a store, try it out in those low light situations. I think it's going to meet your expectation. So just from a spec perspective, that's what I can tell you. From an actual perspective, you're going to see the testimonies come out soon, but you don't have to wait long because this is going to be out in stores soon. You can try it for yourself.
And that's my final question. Thank you for the perfect segue. When can photographers get their hands on it and play with it and go check it out in camera stores? And then B, how much? What's the price point of this thing?
Yeah, so we're committed till the end of the calendar year to bring this out at some point in December, and the response has been tremendous. Actually, it surpassed our expectations, so it brought a tear to my eye because we've been working on this project for so long, and we really were trying to meet the expectations of the customers. Now, price point for the body, it is $54.99, and that's found. You can see all that on our website right there. Nikon USA, so that's in US dollars, $54.99 for the body, and that's really breaking grounds for this level of camera at that price point. That's why it's created such a buzz. So you can start pre-ordering now. The retailers are taking pre-orders, and we'll start shipping this calendar year. So we're at mid-November right now. You're going to see it real soon.
Love it, love it. And just for folks that may be curious, $54.99, there is a comma in there, and the decimal point goes after that last 9. So it's not 54 or $55.
Right.
Perfect. This is a perfect interview. Thank you for sitting down to chat with me. This is one of those interviews that I have a list of questions that I need to get to, that I wanted to get to, or a different meandering directions we could go in. I wanted to keep this high level so we kind of, get some surface level information out there to the people. If people want to dive deeper though, beyond this interview, obviously they can go to NikonUSA.com and check out all the information and the press releases there. But any other resources you want to throw out there for people that just want to kind of do the matrix and plug in and absorb all there is to know about this camera?
Hey, yeah, you know what? Also check out the Nikon USA. I'm not just saying this because I'm the Nikon USA guy, but honestly, we put in so much content. It was a tsunami of content on launch day. Nikon USA YouTube channel, and I promise you, you spend hours on there watching behind the scenes testimonials, end result videos, technical information like product tours, and we even did a 40-minute introduction launch video that's actually available on there, so you can relive the entire launch day as it happened on our YouTube channel. So a lot of great content, as well as our product page on Nikon USA. We worked on that really hard to deliver relevant technical information and really a lot of pretty content as well. So please check that out. You'll fill yourself up for hours and hours.
Yeah, I was diving into some of those videos. It's very, very inspirational. And just to kind of live vicariously through some of your amazing ambassadors. Those guys know what they're doing, and women, they just, amazing photographers across the board in there using amazing gear. So from a photographer standpoint, that's just, it should be illegal to sit down there.
I wanted to say we actually have 8K content on there now too. So check out the 8K content if you have monitors that can support that. We actually have 8K content on our YouTube channel now.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. I won't ask. I know you can't answer the question because I have on my list. What's next? What are the guys in white lab coats in Tokyo or Japan working on right now that we're not gonna see until next year? I guess we'll just have to wait. So We'll get this
Check
thing
out
in
our
our hands.
roadmap. We have a roadmap, so you can check out
For the
you can see what
lenses, though,
lenses
not
are
the
there.
bodies,
Yes.
right? The lenses.
No,
right?
yeah, for the lenses. That's correct. That's correct. Yes.
Yeah, yep. Cool. All right, Mark Cruz, thank you for coming on. I appreciate you. Congratulations on this new camera that's coming out. Best of luck to it and you. And hopefully you'll come on again. When that thing is out in the wild and people are putting it through its paces beyond the ambassadors and those folks, when normal carbon-based life forms have it, I'd love to have you back on to, have a conversation about how the market has received it.
Anytime. This was a pleasure. Thank you very much. I really enjoyed talking to you. So I'll be happy to come back. Thanks.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. You have a good rest of your day, sir, and we'll talk soon. This is TWiP. This episode was sponsored by MPB, the world's largest online platform for used photo and video kit. Visit mpb.com.